Today, a gunman opened fire on an ICE facility in Texas, and the right is already spinning it. Let's talk about it. Welcome back to my YouTube, where I have rearranged my set with no hiccups or anything whatsoever. Nope. Okay, so I'm trying to rearrange my room right now to create room for a set, and I've trapped myself, but trust the process. This morning, a gunman in Dallas, Texas fired into an ICE facility from a nearby rooftop, killing 2 detainees and injuring 1 other. And immediately, the right began blaming this on anti-ICE leftists. So what do we know so far? Early this morning, Kristi Noem took to Twitter confirming that the gunman died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound, but of course, it's Kristi Noem. She can't just leave it at that. While we don't know the motive yet, we know that our ICE law enforcement is facing unprecedented violence against them. It must stop. Vice President Pillsbury Doughboy quickly echoed this rhetoric. He retweeted Kristi Noem and said, "This obsessive attack on law enforcement, particularly ICE, must stop." Yeah, because the modern Gestapo, they're the real victims here. Not the literal immigrant detainees who were shot. Of course, off-the-top violence in any form is not acceptable. But I would argue neither is using incidents of violence to push a political agenda, which is exactly what's happening. Kash Patel tweeted this photo of rounds found on the gunman along with the following. While the investigation is ongoing, an initial review of the evidence shows an ideological motive behind this attack. See photo below. One of the unspent shell casings recovered was engraved with the phrase anti-ICE. When the hell did engraving bullets just become the norm? She asks, in the only country in the world where mass shootings are an everyday occurrence. Kash Patel goes on, "These despicable, politically motivated attacks against law enforcement are not a one-off. We are only miles from Prairieland, Texas, where just 2 months ago an individual ambushed a separate ICE facility, targeting their officers. It has to end, and our FBI and our partners will lead these investigative efforts to see to it that those who target our law enforcement are pursued and brought to the fullest extent of justice." All right, a lot to break down with that. I love that off the top. The investigation is ongoing, but no, this is definitely anti-ICE, leftist, ideologically motivated. After Charlie Kirk's assassination, the right immediately began attacking the left. Trump has consistently blamed the violent, radical left, even at Charlie Kirk's memorial service.
He did not hate his opponents. He wanted the best for them. That's where I disagreed with Charlie. I hate my opponent, and I don't want the best for them. I'm sorry. I am sorry, Erica. But now Erica can talk to me and the whole group, and maybe they can convince me that that's not right, but I can't stand my opponent.
Libs of TikTok and others on Twitter called for war. Conservatives began a doxing campaign of anyone not sufficiently sad. No, not just people who cracked jokes or celebrated, but people who just said, "Yeah, I don't care," or even just quoted Kirk. And it had real ramifications. The Washington Post's only black woman writer got fired for simply quoting Charlie Kirk. Jimmy Kimmel got taken off the air, and now even though he's back, networks like Sinclair and Nexstar Broadcasting are refusing to air his program for statements that were arguably more anti-Trump than anything to do with the Kirk shooting. I'm not going to rehash everything that has followed the Charlie Kirk assassination here because it's been a lot, but we're seeing open attacks on First Amendment rights. Trump used that shooting to further his agenda of stamping out dissent in the media. Now we're already seeing the same seeds planted to use this shooting in Dallas to further Trump's agenda. And this time, it'll be the deployment of the National Guard. For months, Trump has been threatening to deploy the National Guard into Democratic cities and Democratic states against the wishes of Democrat governors. But he struggled to do so outside of DC, which makes sense. DC doesn't have a state government. There's no governor to push back. Mayor Bowser has largely bent to Trump's will on this. The federal government has unique powers in DC that they don't have elsewhere. And while it's completely unprecedented to deploy the National Guard in an American city where there is no emergency, it is technically legal. But the same rules don't apply across the country. Earlier this month, a judge ruled that Trump's deployment of the National Guard in Los Angeles back in April was illegal. And following that ruling, Trump started to turn down the rhetoric of deploying the National Guard to Chicago and Baltimore and New York. Instead, he's deploying them to Memphis, where he has the support of Governor Bill Lee. This is an important distinction. With the governor on board, they technically have the legal power to do this. Sort of. It's murky. But red states aren't the target. target. They're not the scary, crime-filled, liberal cities. That's where Trump wants to go, and that's what he's going to use this for. This entire time, Trump's justification for sending the National Guard into American cities is for them to assist ICE with deportation efforts. He's blamed Democratic mayors for not cooperating with ICE and protesters for being violent and threatening officers. Because masked federal agents kidnapping people off the streets and throwing them into unmarked vehicles, that's not violence, but, you know, people with cell phones filming it while it happens. That's scary. Because the fact is, well, yes, there have been protests against ICE across the country. Incidents of violence has been few and rare. Even in Los Angeles, where Fox News said, the city is on fire, there's riots, it's chaos. The protests were relatively small. We're talking a few hundred people confined to just a couple city blocks. And the handful of larger demonstrations we saw with thousands of marchers, those were during the day and relatively peaceful. Like, nothing was going on. But as much as Fox News and the right and Donald Trump have screamed about these violent leftist protests, because that hasn't been the case, they haven't had justification to send in the National Guard. Until now, because some sick lunatic fired into an ICE facility. And again, I don't give a fuck what his motivations are. I'm obviously not a fan of ICE and mass deportations. I also don't think this is the answer. In fact, it's worse than not the answer. It plays right into Trump's hands, because now he can use this attack as a justification for sending more National Guard troops nationwide. Trump has literally been waiting for this moment. We gotta keep America safe. That's why we're rounding up immigrants that don't have criminal records. That's why we're sending the National Guard to DC, where crime is at a 30-year low. That's why we're attacking due process and free speech and a free press and rolling back our civil liberties. Optics are everything, and the right will use this shooting just like they used the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And man, is it wild to watch the base just eat this up. Like hundreds of thousands of gun deaths in America over the past few decades, literally children dying in our schools. Don't touch the Second Amendment. But Charlie Kirk gets shot in the First Amendment. Well, we don't like that one. I need my guns to stand up to a tyrannical government unless they're sending the National Guard into blue cities, because I don't like them. Ugh. Anyway, this was not the video I had planned to make, but we live in America where shootings just happen and political violence is on the rise, so great. It's extremely scary times right now, but it's more important than ever that we pay attention to not just these incidences of violence and call them out and condemn them, but pay attention to how the administration responds. Because this is the United States of America, this isn't going to be the last incident of political violence in Trump's term. We've already seen his administration is eager to use this moment to further their agenda. Brendan Carr literally shitposting about, yay, it's Project 2025. So anyway, I will be kicking off more content on this channel as we're ramping up opposition to the Trump agenda. I also have a daily newsletter on my Substack you can find here. Subscribe. I share news, break things down into the historical context, and also share resources so you can get involved in your community. Meanwhile, like, share, comment, well, the YouTube things. Do the YouTube things. It's 2025. You know the YouTube things. Wonder how long it'll be until this cup gets me sent to El Salvador.